Hey, good evening, guys. I'm just going to give it about a minute before I talk about tonight's discussion, which is basically just going to be surrounding about the intelligence agencies, pre 9/11 intelligence. And I'm going to give a couple of seconds. I haven't done a live video in a while. It's been a couple of months, about 2 months, 3 months maybe. Um, no, a bit longer than that. I think since last year. I haven't done one. So this is basically last second, actually. I didn't plan on doing one, but I just figured, you know what? I saw my co-researcher, Darren Harvey. He did a video today talking about the intelligence services, domestic intelligence, and what they collected pre 9/11 and how they could have probably prevented 9/11. This is something that is basically altogether, unfortunately, ignored altogether by the citizenry of this country, as well as people around the world. More specifically, the 9/11 Truth Movement, which is unfortunate because you would think, as a truth movement, that they would basically have talked about this ad nauseum 21 years later, and they have not. So fortunate. I mean, maybe in the early years when you had John Gold active and Paul Thompson, um, you know, Kevin Fenton, uh, Jim Hoffman, some of the older, very older truthers that have been around for since 2002, even 2001, after 9/11 even happened. Those were that were active with the um, steering committee of the families of 9/11, the steering committee, that they tried their very best in uh, sharing to the public as much pertinent information regarding what the CIA knew or what the NSA had known. But after 2003, or after really the um, when Alex Jones backed the film Loose Change, I think it was second edition, it was all she wrote from there because Loose Change became the predominant, most popular 9/11 film in the world. And it's unfortunate because that's what gave us all the fringe conspiracies that we have to still deal with today. And that's 16 years later since it first came out. And it's basically what happened is basically destroyed any type of rational discussion involving 9/11. And now, yeah, you do get a few people that still talk about 9/11 in a very, serious light. And these guys have been around, like Ryan Dawson. He's been around for a very long time. And I was on a show just recently. We had a great discussion. I was like, man, this is exactly what's needed. I mean, I know he's like Scott Horton in a way, where he basically just gave up because the French conspiracists, or as he calls them, kooks, basically just so saturated and, you de-evolved the conversation surrounding 9/11 that it basically, some of these people just gave up. Um, so I'm hoping to maybe basically create a little bit of a revitalization of sorts in regards to the most important aspects of 9/11. And to me, it's the intelligence services, pre 9/11 intelligence. In tonight's discussion, I like to talk about two instances where intelligence could have prevented two attacks. One is the 1998 East Africa bombings of Kenya and Tanzania, and of course, it's the events of September 11th, 2001. And so I mean, it really depends on how far you can go back, right? And I could go back many, many years, but I like to stick with the early 1990s period because at least we could show to the public record that we do have the NSA, the National Security Agency, and the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, basically monitoring Bin Laden's satellite phone. Now, according to some discrepancies, according to the CIA and according to the FBI, that the NSA was the first agency on the face of the earth who were monitoring a satellite phone belonging to Osama bin Laden, who was at this time living in the Sudan, Kenya to be specifically, Khartoum, excuse me, um, since 1992. And he had many cell phones during this period. Now, from 1992 to 1998, the NSA, according to the CIA and the FBI, were monitoring bin Laden's satellite phone calls, okay, through many of these satellite phones. Now, the NSA will admit that they started in 1996, but according to the CIA and according to the FBI, it started in 1992. So, really, who do you believe, right? I mean, it's really a crapshoot. Do we really believe the CIA? Do we really believe the NSA, the FBI? You know, it could have started much earlier. Who knows? But at least with the public record, we can at least go to 1992. Okay. Now, I'll start from 1996 because I'd like to give my audience some references about where I'm getting this information. And throughout this lecture tonight, I'm going to give you some references, which are basically news articles. I'm going to be reading some information from some news articles, from historycommons.org, from documents and files I have uploaded on my own personal hard drive. Uh, and I'm going to try and make a timeline of events leading up to the events of September 11, 2001. So at least now we have, with the NSA monitoring bin Laden's satellite phone from 92 to 96. Now, bin Laden has been getting satellite phones from the United States. And what happens is he had some contacts inside the United States. And I'll name some of these people. And what they'll do is they'll basically go buy it at a storefront. It then goes to a handler. That handler then ships it to a contact in Germany or in Spain, and then they send that phone to Afghanistan or in Khartoum in Africa, where Bin Laden gets his phones. And basically, he doesn't always just use one. But what happens is that a lot of these cell phones were decrypted phones. So that means that whatever the NSA had listened to, that they were listening to phone calls that were decrypted. Now, if these phones were encrypted, they basically can't listen, but they can get to the numbers that were actually incoming and outgoing. With decrypted phones, they can decipher the information much quickly. Now, approximately from 1996 to 1998, Bin Laden placed 222, approximately 222 phone calls, with the majority of those phone calls going to Afghanistan and a house in Yemen. Now, I know for sure a lot of these people who are coming in tonight listening to this discussion, you basically have seen many videos ad nauseum where I'm talking about the Al Qaeda communications hub in Sana'a, Yemen. And I hate to, you know, reciprocate old news, but I can't stress enough how important this specific incident is, that this period of history is, because this is the make or break for 9/11. Why is this a make or break? And I'll quickly run down this way. If the NSA and the CIA were monitoring this house and listening to the phone calls, okay, there's one of two things that are happening here. One, Al Qaeda is talking about the attacks years prior to 9/11. So that would mean that the NSA and the CIA knew about the attacks. Two, Al Qaeda wasn't talking about the attacks. They weren't talking about 9/11. Then that would mean that Al Qaeda is not involved with 9/11. Then that would mean that the U.S. State Department, as well as the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, they're all lying about who precipitated these attacks, because according to them, it's Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda. So I'm not pushing an official narrative. I'm not pushing disinformation, fringe conspiracies. I'm just giving you options here. And both of these options are not looking good for the federal government, because if they knew about the attacks years prior, then that means they could have stopped it. If they weren't to, if Al Qaeda wasn't talking about the attacks, that means the United States government basically facilitated these attacks and blamed it on bin Laden and Al Qaeda. So either way, you're not going to be pushed in a divisive section of the 9/11 spectrum. You're not left or right. You're not truth or debunker. You're just somebody who's an individual who is ascertaining what is true and what is not, what is reasonable, what is not reasonable. And I think this is so important for everybody that is watching this video now or in the future, um, that you have to make this decision. Either you want to be a serious researcher for 9/11, or you're just a hobbyist. Now, if you're a hobbyist, it's fine. You can look at 9/11 like that way, or you can, basically talk about, fringe conspiracies that really go nowhere, fake planes or swap planes or CGI planes, living hijackers. All of this basically is a dead end. Um, but what I'm going to give you tonight is basically for the record. It's for the human record. I didn't go into a basement and basically, give money to a undercover outfit to make sure I got this information. This is public information, but it's largely ignored because the federal government doesn't want you to know, and the 9/11 Truth Movement, unfortunately, is imbued with fringe conspiracies. All right, back to the point. So, in April of 1996, we have evidence confirming that there is a cell detailing a cell in Nairobi in Kenya. I'm sorry, in Kenya. That's discovered in May or June of 96. But by August of 96, just a couple months later, the United States federal government and the intelligence services are monitoring 5 telephone lines in Nairobi used by cell members. One of them is Wadi al Hajj. Wadi al Hajj is a U.S. citizen who is acting as a financier for Osama bin Laden and the growing Al Qaeda network in Africa, in Khartoum. Now, this tapping reveals that the cell is providing false passports and other documents to operatives in Africa. Now, they are sending coded telephone numbers to and from Al Qaeda headquarters in Africa and in Afghanistan. Now, remember, Osama bin Laden leaves Khartoum in early of 96 back to Afghanistan in the spring of 96. Now, the surveillance is apparently being conducted without the required approval of either US President Bill Clinton or Attorney General Janet Reno. Why is this? You would think at a principals meeting, which is a meeting of the highest levels of the federal government, of the State Department, and of the intelligence services. That means the director of the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the DIA, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of State go to these meetings and talk about the prescient issues involving U.S. security, either inside the United States or abroad. And the most pressing matters, right? They talk about the most pressing matters. But somehow, Bill Clinton or Janet Reno, the Attorney General, are not aware about this intelligence operation. Now, who's conducting this operation? Well, it's the CIA. Now, you'll understand also from many videos I've done and other people that we have a level of distrust between, like, say, the CIA and the FBI. This goes back decades. Same thing for the NSA. The NSA has a slight better relationship regarding the CIA than it does with the FBI, and the NSA has a slight relationship with the FBI. But neither agency really has a very good relationship with each other. Now they'll play it off. I mean, the DCI or the FBI director, they'll all basically uh, play it off and say that, yeah, we have a good relationship, but they don't really. And they just don't have a good relationship. So that means intelligence is not passed around. Pertinent intelligence, really um, pertinent intelligence, which is a CIR, a Central Intelligence Report. That's what's called a CIR. Okay. These are reports talking about intelligence collected from either at a CIA base station or an FBI station abroad or an NSA signals intelligence base station abroad, whatever, right? Some of these CIRs are not shared with one another. So that means that the intelligence, say, collected with bin Laden or Al Qaeda, are not shared. Not all of it, anyway. Some of it's shared, maybe the vague information, but the more pertinent information is not shared with one another. So that means nothing could really get done. Now, whether you want to say this is happening on purpose, or whether you want to say that basically this is about ego regarding who wants to be the primary agency involved with this operation with bin Laden, either way, you're going to be right and wrong. right? You're not going to be totally wrong, in other words. But you're not going to be totally right. Because we really don't know. And that's exactly where they want you at, in a state of paralysis, not knowing. Knowing is a definitive answer. Knowledge. That's what intelligence is about. Knowledge. That's why we don't get much of it. So, regarding this Nairobi house, now we have a triple agent. I've talked about him before. His name is Ali Muhammad, an Egyptian officer who actually works as a conduit between Al Qaeda, bin Laden, and Omar Abdul Rahman, the blind sheikh at Al Masjid Al Salam in New Jersey, and Al Farouk in New York, which was the Maktab Al Kidamat, the Afghan Services Bureau, which is a conduit, the main conduit in Pakistan and the United States, in which the CIA's Operation Cyclone was funding millions of dollars to. Now, Ali Muhammad was living in California. He has a house in California. He's actually married to a woman, too, American woman. Will later admit in U.S. court that he had been in long distance contact with Wadi al Hajj since at least 1996. Okay. Now, according to an article, which is written by Kevin Kelly, dated January 1st, 2001, the United States government knew about Kenya embassy bombers in 1996. That's 2 years prior to the attacks. I'll quote you the article. Quote, United States court ruling released on the eve of the opening of the East Africa embassy bombings trial raises new questions about the effectiveness of Kenyan and American surveillance of suspected terrorists in Nairobi. A judge's decision unsealed last week in New York reveals that U.S. intelligence agents knew as early as April of 96, more than 2 years prior to the bombing, that Osama bin Laden terrorist organization had established a presence in Kenya. U.S. prosecutors also recently charged that an operative of Osama bin Laden had conducted photographic and visual surveillance of the Nairobi embassy as early as 1993. By the way, that operative is Ali Muhammad, who actually is not just an operative for Al Qaeda and Omar Abdul Rahman. He's also an FBI informant. He's also a CIA informant. He's a triple agent. The pretrial ruling by federal judge Leonard Sand further indicates that 5 Nairobi telephone lines used by bin Laden associates were continuously monitored by U.S. intelligence for a year, beginning in August of 96. What do you think they were talking about in those phones? Just like I talked about in Yemen. Here we have it. Is anybody talking about this? No. Why not? Here it is. It's a backbreaking decision. This is important information. Information everybody should know. Why wasn't Bill Clinton involved? Why wasn't Attorney General Giannarino involved? Who was involved with this operation? Now, according to the article, again, the U.S. State Department has already acknowledged that it was warned of a planned bomb attack on the Nairobi embassy 9 months before the actual explosion. 9 months. Okay. That article is from the East African, written by Kevin Kelly, dated January 1st, 2001. And for those who are, I will actually save this article and link it to the bottom of the description for you to read. Remarkable revelation. Okay. So by November of 96, like I said, bin Laden was using a compact M satellite phone about the size of a laptop computer, which was purchased by an operative who was living in Virginia named Ziad Khalil. Now, I've talked about this individual in certain past videos before. He bought this telephone for $7,500 using the credit card of a British man named Saad El Fagi. And after purchasing this phone, Khalil sent it to a contact named Khalid Al Fawaz, who is actually an Al Qaeda unofficial press secretary in London. Remember, I told you that there'll be an operative inside the United States that sends it abroad, either to Spain, Germany, or Britain. Okay. I forgot to name the main office for Al Qaeda is in Britain, actually. Forgot to mention this. Um, and then they'll send it to Tora Bora, Afghanistan, where bin Laden is actually uh, bunkering down with Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri and Suleiman Abu Ghaith and other high-level Al-Qaeda operatives like Abu Hassan Masri, also known as Mohammed Atef, the Al-Qaeda military commander. Now, Fawaz gets the phone and he ships it to bin Laden in Afghanistan. Now, it appears that U.S. intelligence actually tracks this purchase. Now, they were tracking this purchase, this specific purchase. The FBI was. Now, this is unrelated to bin Laden. The FBI was actually conducting an investigation into um, Ziad Khalil for his contact with Hamas. This is coming from an Operation Vulgar Betrayal, which was an FBI sting involving terrorist operations inside the United States regarding Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay, the preconceived enemies of Israel. That's why the FBI was involved, right? So they didn't know that this phone was going to Bin Laden, but the FBI asked the NSA to monitor the purchase of this phone call, this satellite phone, and the NSA did. And meanwhile, this phone is a decrypted telephone line. That means, like I said before, that they could listen to the phone calls and actually see what numbers are calling from it and what numbers are calling, bin Laden is calling to. Now, it appears that the NSA had actually tracked the purchase as it occurs as well because of the FBI's insistence. It is believed that this phone was actually used by Ayman al-Zawahiri and Mohammed Atef. And I would love to know what they were talking about on those phones. Can you imagine? I mean, I would probably be remiss to tell you that they're not talking about the Yankees or the Mets. Friend Mike is in this room. He's a Met fan. Or they're talking about, chocolate chip cookies. They're talking about operations. These are serious men. Okay. But we'll never know because the information is classified. Now, though the calls on these phones are sometimes encrypted, sometimes they're decrypted, the NSA is able to intercept and decrypt them, right? And according to one anonymous official in 2001, that from an article written by Newsweek on February 18th of 2002, that codes were broken. That means the NSA basically deprogrammed or decrypted every single telephone line regarding every single satellite phone that bin Laden had used. Now, the Los Angeles Times will report that the monitoring of these phones produced tens of thousands of transcripts. It's got to be well above that number, maybe even like 60,000, 70,000. I can only imagine 6 years worth. Okay. Even if we took it from 1996 to 1998, we're talking about daily phone calls. Just incredible amount of metadata here. Now, the billing records for his new phone are released to the media in a Newsweek article in early of 2002. Now, according to that same article, quote, a country-by-country analysis of the bills provided to U.S. authorities with a virtual roadmap to important al-Qaeda cells around the world. The NSA, and I hate to use the word ad nauseum, the NSA basically was the premier agency in the world, more than Israel, more than Saudi Arabia, more than any country on the face of the earth. They had more data on bin Laden and al-Qaeda than any agency in the world. Just imagine, they had every single phone call from 1992 to 1998 of bin Laden's satellite phone. They had every single number he called. They had every single number that phone was made to, whether it's, and I'll basically tell you the countries he called. Britain. Okay. He called this number 238 times. 27 different phone numbers are called to Britain. Accounts differ. Now, I'm reading from CNN, an article dated April 16, 2001. The accounts differ on the exact number of calls. Khalid al-Fawaz, who helped publish statements by bin Laden, receives 143 of them. Apparently, most of the remaining calls are made to payphones near him or to his associates. He frequently calls Ibrahim Idris, who works with Khalid al-Fawaz and lives near him. 221 of those calls went to a house in Sana'a, Yemen. Sana'a is the capital of Yemen, which is the Al-Qaeda communications hub in Sana'a, Yemen, which is run by the father-in-law of 9/11 hijacker Khalid al-Mihdhar. His name is, oh my goodness, I just had a brain freeze. Ahmed al-Hada is the name of the person who owns the house in Sana'a, Yemen. His son-in-law is Khalid al-Mihdhar, because Khalid al-Mihdhar is married to the daughter, Hoda al-Hada, which will now make him his son-in-law. Khalid al-Mihdhar is one of the hijackers of American Airlines Flight 77 that crashed into the Pentagon. This is huge. I mean, this is amazing. 131 of those calls went to the Sudan. Now, Sudan basically is an Al-Qaeda communications hub. Before he went back to Afghanistan in 96, that's where he collected a lot of the the Arab Mujahideen from al-Masada training camp, which basically later became Al-Qaeda in the Sudan. Bin Laden lived in the Sudan until May of 1996, and there's still some operatives there, like Wadi al-Hajj and others. 67 calls went to Azerbaijan, which is an important Al-Qaeda operative based in Baku, Azerbaijan. The contact is Ahmed Salama Marbouk, who is very close to Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri from the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, who is now the emir of Al-Qaeda. 56 calls went to Kenya. And this later was actually recorded in the trial of the 1990 East Africa bombings. In the embassy bombings trial, prosecutors introduced evidence showing 16 calls are made on this phone, the phone that bin Laden used. Also, I need to tell you that during the embassy trial, the number of the Sana'a Yemen hub was public in this trial. That's 1998, ladies and gentlemen. 98, 99. How the heck are they basically still using this line, even though it's being brought up in a trial in the embassy bombings of 98, 99? It's stunning. Meanwhile, this is the Al-Qaeda communications hub. Right here. This is the epicenter of the attacks. This is the epicenter of everything. What did the American intelligence know? What didn't they know? Well, apparently they knew a lot. They knew a lot more than they related to the public. Why isn't anybody talking about this? This is the backbreaking part of old 9/11. Either they had the intelligence to stop the attacks, or they facilitated the attacks. It's either or. You're not going to be relegated to debunker truther status. That's irrelevant. This is what should be talked about. This should be on every front page of every major newspaper, but we know why it's not. This should be in everybody's lips. The intelligence services, I'm telling you, had enough information to stop these attacks. But I digress. In December of 1996, the head of the Bin Laden issue station, which is codenamed Balak Station, Michael Scheuer, who was head of this unit from 1996 to 1999, he would write a book in 2004, and he will write about how the NSA surveillance of Bin Laden's satellite phone and the house in Yemen, okay, according to Scheuer, a CIA officer working overseas with the NSA on these operations tells the CIA Bin Laden unit and Scheuer that the NSA is the literal gold mine of all intelligence in the world. More than Israel, more than Egypt, more than Russia, more than Saudi Arabia, more than the CIA or the ISI or the MI6. The premier agency, the NSA. This is coming from the CIA who's working with the NSA. Now, Shoya basically he conducts human intelligence. CIA does human intelligence, or in short, it's called human. Which signals intelligence, it's the NSA or SIGINT. If you ever see SIGINT, 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 that's what that means. Signals intelligence, human intelligence. So the NSA involves the CIA about the operation involving Bin Laden and Al Qaeda communications hub in Yemen, as well as Bin Laden's satellite phone. But mainly the NSA is in charge of that because CIA doesn't do signals intelligence. So the CIA now has like an eye and an ear because they bugged the house, but they didn't bug the phone. So they can only listen to half of the phone calls. Okay. So what they did was basically they did this. The NSA refused to share information gained from the phone of the Yemen hub. Shoya went to the deputy director of the NSA, Barbara McNamara, and tells her, can you give us the other half of the transcript so we can understand what's going on or what's being said on those phones? And she goes, no. Now, Shoya doesn't like being told no. He's a very aggressive individual. So Barbara McNamara knew this and threatened legal action. While the NSA knows the rest of the material, it continues to refuse to share it with either the CIA, the FBI, or Richard Clarke, who's head of the counterterrorism unit in the White House. Why? Why aren't they sharing this? You know, you would think that all the agencies together working on behalf of the American people are basically trying to protect the interests of the American people. This would be it. Invaluable information gleaning from the most dangerous man in the world since Abu Nidal, Osama bin Laden, Al Qaeda. Studying turn of events. Okay. So, not only this, the FBI had an informant who basically was helping them. And I did a video about him before. His name is Jamal Al Fadl. And what he did was in mid 1996, Jamal Al Fadl walked into a U.S. embassy in Eritrea. He's actually a defect from Al Qaeda. Never before has there ever been any defector from Al Qaeda, and he's been there since the beginning. And what he did was he became a key informant to the United States about Al Qaeda's inner workings and leadership between the years from June of 96 to April 97. He was debriefed by the FBI. Now, even later on, the 9/11 Commission final report will later mention that Jamal Al-Fadl's corroborating evidence came from another walk-in source at a different U.S. embassy, and that's Ali Mohammed later. Now, unfortunately, nothing more has been publicly revealed about this other defector. Some say it was Ali Mohammed. Some people are saying it's not. Okay. Ali Mohammed is such a wild card because he was an informant for the FBI. He was an informant for the CIA, but he was also a loyalist, an Al Qaeda loyalist, a loyalist to Bin Laden. So we don't know what to believe from him. That's why I always said that he was the other defector, but who knows? Now, there was another defector named Lahous Karouch II, who actually is an Al Qaeda defector later on in 96 and early 97. Okay. Now, the 9/11 Commission also mentions him by name elsewhere in their final report, but he doesn't talk to the United States until mid 2000, so it can't be him. Now, it's important to note that Al Fadl basically warns the FBI that the Kenyan operations cell, where Wadi Al Hajj is at, and other Al Qaeda affiliates are at, they're planning to bomb a U.S. embassy. And this is 1996. Like I said, 1996, 2 years prior to the attacks of the embassy bombings in 98. Okay, now this is going to sound very similar to the events of September 11, 2001, which I'm going to get into in a minute, because we had intelligence that could have either partly prevented the attacks or, according to former senior executive Thomas Drake, could have stopped the attacks altogether. And I believe the NSA, just them alone, could have stopped not just 1998 East Africa bombing, but 9/11 altogether. And I'll get into that in a minute. Okay. Now, in August 21st of 1997, Dan Coleman, who's actually an FBI agent working with Alex Station, who's actually one of the original members of the Bin Laden counterterrorism unit in New York and a legendary agent in his own right, had been examining transcripts from wiretap phones. And I talked about the 5 lines connected to Bin Laden's businesses in the Sudan. One frequently called number belonged to Wadi El Haj, a U.S. citizen who's later revealed to be Bin Laden's personal secretary, who was actually married to an American woman in Houston. Now, Al Haj often makes obvious and clumsy attempts to speak in code, and he's not the brightest individual in the bunch. But the Central Intelligence Agency came to believe that Al Haj might be recruited as an agent for the CIA. This is now, of course, I'm going to get into the CIA and what they tried to do pre 9/11 regarding Syrian contacts to try and integrate with the Hamburg cell. But when Coleman and 2 CIA agents and a Kenya police officer entered Al Haj's house in Nairobi, Kenya, with a search warrant, the investigators interview Al Haj, who returned that day from visiting bin Laden in Afghanistan. And what they recovered was a large amount of incriminating evidence, documents, and computer files. And when they did this, Al Haj was not arrested. He's not being prosecuted for the crime yet. So what did Al Haj do? He actually moves to the United States, which is the dumbest thing to do because that's who's investigating him. So when he's interviewed by a grand jury, he's let go on September 24th of 1997. But he's arrested shortly after the U.S. Embassy bombings of Kenya and Nairobi. Now, what did they find in Al Haj's house? They found that a letter, there's a couple of incriminating evidences here. This goes to show you that the intelligence was there to prevent the East Africa bombings. This is the theme of tonight's lecture, that pre-intelligence could have stopped at least 2 major U.S. terrorist attacks of the United States, inside the United States and abroad. Could have stopped. The one document they found was Al Haj's confiscated personal computer written by an individual named Fazul Abdullah Muhammad, also known as Harun Fazul, who is an actual member of the Al Qaeda Kenyan cell who's living with Al Haj at the time. The letter was written a week before the raid. It refers to the East African cell and alludes to the cell's role in attacking U.S. soldiers in 1993. Remember the Black Hawk Down incident? That's what that was referring to. It also explains that a cache of incriminating files was recently removed from Al Haj's house and hidden, and says that members of this cell are convinced 100% that they're being monitored by foreign intelligence services. It also talks about other operatives in the town of Mombasa, Kenya, and talks about the imminent arrival of engineers to help the cell, engineers in helping to build bombs. Another document was found on the same computer that revealed that Al Haj was sent to Kenya to bin Laden to initiate a new policy for the Kenyan cell and to prepare 300 militants. Other members of the cell were advised of the need to move families to a secure region before the activism. Now, it's coming from what I'm referring to is a New York Times article dated November 22nd, 2000. It notes that other operatives had carried out an operation in the capital of Ethiopia, which was presumably the attempted assassination of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak in June of 95. And then adds, quote, there are a lot of explosions in other cities, and the brothers are willing to take up operations. Other files that were recovered from the house revealed that Wadi al-Hajj and an associate are fabricating false passports for operatives in the Caucasus, as well as fighters in Somalia. So that means that Ibn Khattab, who's the leader of the Islamic Mujahideen in the Chechens who are fighting the Russians in the Balkans, as well as the Al Qaeda operatives in Kenya, who are giving false passports. And by the way, Khalid al Midar, Nawaf Hazmi, the 9/11 hijackers of Flight 77, they fought in the Balkans, and they fought with false passports. That means they got it from here. That's another connection. Also, additionally found in this operation was Wadi al-Hajj's address book, which provides many leads. Yet despite all of this, no arrests are made and no urgent alarms are sounded. The wiretaps on the Kenyan cell phone lines, 5 of them, actually stopped by the end of the month. What? You just revealed a large incriminating amount of information. You just revealed 5 monitored phone lines from the NSA that were listening to the phone calls of this Kenyan cell, talking about operations, bombs making material, bomb making manuals, bomb making expertise, militant activity that's growing inside this Kenyan cell, talking about false passports relating to bin Laden and Al Qaeda, not in the Caucasus, but in Kenya. And they stopped the operation? This is unbelievable. Who's in charge of this? Who called for the end of this? And this is stunning. I'm going to blow you away with this one. In November of 97, an Egyptian named Mustafa Mahmoud Saeed Ahmad walks into a U.S. embassy in Nairobi, Kenya, and tells the CIA there that he knows of a group planning to blow up U.S. embassies in Africa. November of 97. Now I'm going to read from 2 articles, not one, but 2. Times article dated, New York Times article dated October 23rd, 1998, and a New York Times article dated November 9th, 1999. Mustafa Mahmoud Saeed Mahmoud walks into a U.S. embassy in Nairobi, Kenya, and tells CIA officers that he knows of a specific militant group that is willing to blow up U.S. embassies in Africa. He reveals that he is part of the group and has already taken surveillance photos of embassies for the attack. The details he mentions, such as the use of several vehicles and stun grenades, accurately depicts how the attacks will occur 9 months later. The CIA sends the State Department 2 intelligence reports, or CIRs, Central Intelligence Reports, on Ahmed's warning, but caution that he may have fabricated the story. Right? Ahmed, instead of being ushered away inside a safe house and debriefed, he's actually arrested. He's then released and deported to Egypt. He apparently, later on, according to these articles, he apparently is involved in the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, on the same day the Nairobi Embassy is also bombed. Ahmed later on contacts the British Embassy the day after the bombings and offers to help. He's overheard saying, "I told them everything I knew," and that he had been cooperating with Western officials since last year. He will reveal that leads to the arrest of some of the bombers between August 8th and August 15th of 1998. The State Department is in charge of embassy security, and the department steps up security at the Nairobi, Kenya for several weeks, but then takes off the measures. So not only do we have intelligence that could have stopped the embassy bombings in 98, we have an informant who's involved with the bombing, who basically is saying, "Hey, listen, by the way, we know these embassies are going to be bombed." So they detain him, arrest him, release him, and deport him. That's what they did. The CIA did anyway. On the heels of this information, in December of 1997, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Prudence Bushnell, declares that the embassy is in danger of a terrorist attack. Now, she's been told through her own intelligence reports that she's been told that since August of 97, that have been enough warnings that prove that there was an Al Qaeda cell in Nairobi that's willing to attack U.S. embassies in Africa. Now, she collects enough information, including information indicating that she is also an assassination target. And she sends two cables, one to the State Department headquarters in Washington, claiming that the embassy's location makes it extremely vulnerable to a terrorist attack, and asks for security improvements to be made, and another to a State Department official. What happens? The State Department, in turn, turned down her requests and begins to see Bushnell as a nuisance. I'm not making this up, folks. In early of 98, General Anthony Zinni, the commander of the U.S. forces in the region, visits Nairobi, Kenya, and decides it is indeed vulnerable to terrorist attacks. But his offer is turned down. He offers to send a security detail to inspect the situation, but that offer is turned down by the State Department. On August 7, 1998, two U.S. embassies are bombed in Tanzania and Kenya. At around the same time, bin Laden gets rid of the satellite phone, claiming that he thinks Western intelligence may be monitoring the calls. But what he doesn't know is that the NSA had long been monitoring his phone, but just because he ditched the satellite phone, they still have one monitoring operation currently, which is the Sana Yemen House, which is being used by Al Qaeda operatives all around the world to send messages all around the world. The NSA and the CIA are listening to the phone calls. Now, the CIA can only listen to half. The NSA can listen to everything, incoming and outgoing. They were taking pictures of people coming in and out of the house for years. So from 1996 to 2001, the NSA and the CIA, and God knows who else that we know of. We just know these two agencies, the premier intelligence agencies in the world, in charge of the biggest, most important intelligence operation in the world at the time. We're collecting metadata, phone calls, emails, text messages of people coming in and out of the house. Not to mention, we also have a defense intelligence agency operation called Able Danger, led by the Department of the Army, General Hugh Shelton and Peter Shoemaker. There were 5 people detailed to this very covert unit, and members of a specific signal intelligence unit called the Land Information Warfare Activities Division. Now, I am probably one of the very few people in the world to actually interview somebody from LIWA, Colonel Eric Kleinsmith. In fact, I'm one of the very few people in the world to interview 2 people from Able Danger. Anthony Schaefer, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer of the Department of the Army, and Eric Kleinsmith of the Land Information Warfare Activities Division. And what they told me was that they had met the Land Information Warfare Activities Division and Schaefer's own unit, Stratus Ivy, which is a covert intelligence unit, were basically collecting data, public and private information, about terrorist operations inside the United States. They found that there were 2 cells that were operating inside the United States. One was operation led by Omar Abdel Rahman in the mid-90s, and later on, from 1999 to 2000, Mohammed Atta and the Hamburg cell. The information they got was so enormous that the Department of the Army's lawyers, SOCOM, Special Operations Command lawyers, deemed that all the information they were collecting were of U.S. persons. So that means that the Department of the Army's lawyers were basically saying that Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehhi, and Ziad Jarrah were basically U.S. persons. even though they're not born here, and that the only thing making them U.S. persons was temporary U.S. Uh, student visas. Later on, the Department of the Army ordered members of Able Danger to destroy all the metadata they had collected regarding these two cells in the year 1999. Later on, in a Senate Intelligence Hearing Committee, they told members of Able Danger, as well as the Department of Defense, William Dugan, who represented the Department of Defense. He was asked by the head committee, Arlen Specter, whether Muhammad Atta was a U.S. person. William Dugan basically hammered and stammered, but later admitted that he said no. In other words, Muhammad Atta was not a U.S. person. So, in other words, the data should not have been destroyed. Could that data have prevented 9/11? Well, according to Schaefer and Eric Kleinsmith, could have basically stopped part of it. Why was it destroyed? Let's go back to the CIA. CIA and NSA basically running operations for 5 years regarding the Al Qaeda communications hub in Yemen. I can only imagine and tell you the amount of metadata the NSA collected. And like I said, according to Michael Scheuer, the NSA was the premier agency in the world, out of any agency in the world, that collected so much metadata. They were the gold mines of metadata. I can't tell you what information they had or collected, what they didn't have, because it's classified information. Now, I'm actually trying to talk with lawyers currently about getting a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information request, regarding the cables that were collected from these phone calls in Al Qaeda, Yemen. But as long as we still have a trial in Guantanamo, or thereof, this information is going to be classified under Executive Order 101. I think it's like 3888 or something like that. So it's going to be classified. However, if a statute of limitations are on this information that past 25 years, we could probably force the issue unless the worst happens. The worst is basically that this trial doesn't take place, that the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the other Guantanamo detainees, they all plead guilty. And if they do this without a trial, remember, whatever evidence the prosecution has becomes public after a trial. If there's no trial and these guys plead guilty, all the information the prosecution has or whatever they didn't have is classified. That means for the next 30 or 40 years, whatever they have, we'll never know. And if I'm living that long, after 30 or 40 years, if I still have a marble or two running around, I might just do that. But this looks like it's going to be for the next generation. And my worst fear is that they're going to plead guilty, because right now the U.S. federal government is trying to make a deal with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and taking the death penalty off the table for them to plead guilty to 9/11. So whatever the NSA has, whatever the CIA has at this point is basically classified. But I could probably tell you with reassurance, safe reassurance, that indeed, for sure, they were talking about the attacks of September 11th. If they were talking about the 1998 East Africa bombings, you could be rest assured that between the years 2000 2001, they're talking about the 9/11 attacks, or the planes operation, as they called it. What else would they be talking about? It's not like they're going to be talking about, parties or anything, mundane, trivial nonsense that they partake in. These are, like I said, these are serious men. Why doesn't anybody talk about this stuff, right? We rather talk about the fringe conspiracies of living hijackers and missiles and, just redundant nonsense. We have enough right here to basically say, by the way, you guys had enough metadata to stop these attacks. Why didn't you? And by the way, if you were listening to the Bin Laden satellite phone and you were listening to House in Yemen, I'd like to know what information you had. What did they know? What were they talking about? Maybe they weren't talking about it. And if they weren't involved, well, then what the hell? Why are you lying about it? This is what we should be talking about. And this is what drives me nuts. And if I sound like I'm broken record, I can't tell you how important this is. This is the backbreaker of 9/11. This is it right here. The NSA. I think they knew. If you want my honest opinion, they knew. And they modified the attacks in a way where the attacks are successful because it benefited who? You know. You know who this benefited to. Did it benefit us? Heck no. We're still living under the ripple effects of 9/11 to today. All of our emails, all of our phone calls, all of our text messages stored away forever at the UConn data center in Pine Bluff, Utah. I ask people you ever heard of the Utah data center? They say no. Unbelievable. The Patriot Act, the North Defense, the NDA Act of 2001, 2002, 2003, the invasion of Afghanistan, the invasion of Iraq twice, two civil wars in Iraq. Later on, the invasion of Syria, the invasion of Libya, the carpet bombing of Pakistan, the carpet bombing of Yemen. This is all a byproduct of the attacks of September 11, 2001. I mean, what else could these guys be talking about on these phones? Not to mention that we knew about two men who were from the Al Qaeda communications hub in Yemen, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, long-standing Al Qaeda operatives. The NSA heard about a Malaysia summit meeting of highest levels of terrorism being that they're going to be meeting up in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, January 5th of 2000. The NSA told the FBI and the CIA about this so they could take pictures, and they did. The FBI never got those pictures. The CIA did. Meanwhile, the CIA heard about two operatives that were leaving from there, going to Thailand, and then coming to the United States. The CIA knew this. But the CIA can't legally conduct operations inside the United States by law. So that means that they had to stop the operation involving Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Did they tell the State Department that? No. Did they tell them at a principals meeting in the future? No. Did they tell the FBI? No. When the cable came in about the pictures and about the U.S. visas that Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi had, the FBI tasked to the CIA Bin Laden issue station, codename Alex Station, which is now run by Richard Blee, who is more of an agency man than Scheuer, who has a deputy chief of Alex Station, Tom Wilshire, who's second in command. They saw the cable, but so did the FBI tasked there. The first FBI agent was Doug Miller. Doug Miller saw this and said, oh my God, two Al-Qaeda operatives that may have been involved with the 1998 East Africa bombings that has connections to Chechnya rebels in Chechnya with Al-Qaeda under Ibn Khattab. He's writing up a draft memo, a CIA report to warn headquarters about conducting operations as soon as they get off the plane, which is landing in Los Angeles International, LAX airport. But they have to get permission from the CIA. By the way, we're trying to warn FBI headquarters about two guys that were involved with 1998 Africa bombings that have U.S. visas. What did the CIA tell them? You can't share that information. Can't share that information because it's a CIA matter. They're inside the United States. Doesn't matter. We think an attack happens in Malaysia. So now the FBI can't share the information. This goes on for the next 16 months. The CIA finally tells from Richard Blee and Cofer Black, head of the Counterterrorism Center. They go to a principals meeting in August of 2001, August 27th, I want to say 20, I can't remember the date, 21st, 27th, 2001. They say, hey, by the way, we have two operatives, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, they're inside the United States. How long did you know this? They didn't tell them. They also didn't tell them that they had U.S. visas. They had Saudi visas, but not U.S. visas. They didn't tell them that. Amazing. Trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? Weeks before 9/11. Now the FBI is basically trying to, put on their shoes and basically run out and try to find two Arab men, and God knows where they are. However, the Saudis knew because as soon as they stepped off the plane, the Saudis were basically funding and giving them lodging. Now, this came out through a recent cache of files that I uh, did a video on regarding Bin Laden's latest cache of files that was released under Executive Order 100311 or something like that. Which basically shows for the first time what we always knew, that the Saudi government was basically funding the hijackers of 9/11 involved with Flight 77. Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafa Hazmi. We knew it. Right there. It's unredacted. Did the media report on it? No. It basically got no attention whatsoever. I made a video at 4 a.m. as soon as I read the article by NorthJersey.com. NorthJersey.com. That's who broke the article. Amazing. I ran to my computer and did a video. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Here we have it. A Saudi government agency funding hijackers through an intermediary. First time in history. My God, this should have been on every front page newspaper. Nope. Instead, the FBI and the State Department continued to cover up the Saudis' involvement. Now, at the same time, you have the Israeli moving front companies, the art student ring that were monitoring the members of the Hamburg cell. Did they tell the State Department? Did they tell the FBI? Nope. I'll spare you more of the details, but September 11, 2001. A couple of years later, some whistleblowers from the NSA come out. One of the most important whistleblowers in history is Thomas Drake. To me, he's the most important whistleblower in history since Daniel Ellsberg. And what did he say? He said the following. This is the former senior executive of the NSA. He said that the NSA had so much metadata on the 9/11 hijackers and Bin Laden that they alone could have prevented 9/11 from even happening. Outside of the CIA, outside of the Saudis or the Israelis, just them alone. The metadata was enormous. And when Thomas Drake showed Maureen Baginski, the signals intelligence director, regarding the information, she told Thomas Drake, Tom, I wish you had not shown me this. Why did she say that? Because Maureen Baginski can no longer say she had plausible deniability. That the NSA could have prevented 9/11 from even happening. What about the CIA? Well, the CIA could have prevented 9/11 from even happening too. Now, at least it's a little bit more clearer, although the information that they had also was classified. But at the very least, they intentionally withheld information from the FBI regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafa Hazmi on purpose. That came out in the Joint Intelligence Inquiry. I don't know what to tell you, ladies and gentlemen. How is this not on everybody's lips? Why isn't it? And by the way, this is not like I can name names, okay? We have George Tenet, the director of the CIA. We have Cofer Black, head of the Counterterrorism Center. We have Tom Wilshire, the deputy chief of Alex Station. We have Richard Blee, the chief of Alex Station. Michael Scheuer, the chief of Alex Station. Michelle Ann Casey, who's an analyst at the CIA, who's head of the operation at the Yemen hub. It's not like we don't know what's going on, and we have people we could connect dots to, and we're not holding anybody accountable. Why? Because we're talking about living hijackers and missiles. I think you can understand my frustration. I think you can understand my vitriol for these people that propose these silly, outrageous, ridiculous theories that basically cover up everything I just told you about. Everything I just told you. They're doing the work of the State Department. They're doing the work of the foreign intelligence agencies of Israel, of Saudi Arabia. They're doing the work for them. I expect that from Israel. I expect that from Saudi Arabia, the Gulf. I expect that from the State Department. I don't expect that from my common citizenry here in the United States. Are they that ridiculously dense? Are they brainwashed? What's wrong with these people? 21 years later, we're still talking about swap planes and missiles, drones, CGI holograms. The CIA doesn't have to do anything. We're doing the work for them. My God, this is embarrassing. And like I said, the information I'm telling you is public. You can understand, you can see it for yourself, which is the reason why I tell you where the information I'm getting from with these news articles. I give you the dates and headlines so you can see for yourself. It's frustrating, to say the least, that we can hold people accountable. Some of these people are still alive. One of the CIA analysts at Alex Station, Alfreda Ampikowski, has now retired, and she's a beautician. She does beauty videos. What? It's like they know nothing's going to happen to these people because no one's going to bring up their names. Hardly anyone, anyway. In a small channel like myself, I'm no threat to anybody. That's why I tell other people to make channels of their own, spread this information. This information is pertinent information. We're talking about an inside job here, right? That's what everyone wants to talk about. An inside job. I hate that term. Well, here it is. This is it. It's just astonishing that we still have people like Richard Gage from 9/11 Unleashed, and he's interviewing people who don't even believe planes even existed on 9/11. I mean, it's a fugazi. This is this is it. This has got to be a goof. This is a goof. The year is 2022, ladies and gentlemen. These people are going to walk away from the biggest mass murder in history that may have been facilitated in part by the U.S. government and foreign intelligence. Thank you, Israel. Thank you, Saudi Arabia. With friends like these, who needs enemies? Wow. No wonder they can get away with bombing a country like Yemen, the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. 1.3 million people are displaced, approximately close to 500,000 people dead. And we're talking about Ukraine? The complete destruction of the Middle East, especially the Shia community. Why are we allied with Saudi Arabia? Why are we allied with Israel? These are imperialist policies, imperialist countries that are guilty of some of the worst egregious human rights violations in the world. That's not me talking, it's Amnesty International. That's Red Cross International. Human Rights Watch. I don't know what to say other than, I sound like a broken record at this point. No wonder the State Department gets away with the most terrible crimes imaginable in world history. No country on the face of the earth gets away with more crimes than the United States government, led by the CIA, who most likely could have prevented 9/11 from even happening, who most likely was behind the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, who is behind the mass executions of reporters and left-wing activists in Central America, who are behind the complete destruction of a country like Syria. Meanwhile, we're supposed to be funding the war on terror. We're funding them with these Syrian jihadists, Operation Timber Sycamore, for example. Who is behind that? The CIA, Israel, and Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. What? No, we're talking about Tom Brady throwing touchdowns and how much bigger Kim Kardashian's ass gets better. But don't talk about that. Don't talk about the um, the continued destabilization of countries like Libya, Iraq, the Taliban taking over Afghanistan again. What a waste of 20 years and $3 trillion. I could basically rant a little bit more, but I think you guys have better things to do. But I didn't want to drag this on any longer. And I just wanted to bring attention to the effect that we had enough intelligence regarding two instances: the 1998 East Africa bombings and the attacks of September 11, 2001. You heard it here tonight. I named some articles for you. I'll provide those articles in the description box when I can after it's done so that you could read some of them. It's not, look, it's frustrating for me because all this information should have been known to you 15 years ago. And I see that my best co researcher of 9/11, DJ Thermal Detonators here, we have been trying for the past 5 years that we've known each other, um, giving you daily videos. It's with films. With me, it's documents and files and some videos. We've been trying to give you the best of updated material every single day. Every day, we're trying to give you a little bit more information that you didn't know before. Something new, something tangible, something you can work with, something that you can learn from, education, knowledge, not belief. I'm not here to blow smoke up your ass. I'm not here to speculate. And if I am speculating, I'll tell you when I'm speculating. But I can't make a movement based on speculation. I need a movement of people that we all need to be a part of, an educated movement, a knowledgeable movement. That's how you build a movement. It's the only way we're going to get things done. There's not many people like us left. It's unfortunate. I can't believe it. I'm even saying that. But the information that we'll continue to provide, we'll do it every single day for as long as we can to try and help build a bigger movement of people that can basically take that information and do better things with it than I can. I'm a nobody, all right? I'm just relaying public information. I'm not smarter than anybody. I'm not wiser than anybody. Maybe somebody in this room will create a channel and they'll reach bigger people than I could. That's the benefit. To me, that's the goal. We need more people involved, though. We need so many more people. And it's a shame because this is where the 9/11 Truth Movement should have been the face, should have been the real movement, but they were deceived by the likes of Richard Gage and Jason Burmis, Loose Change, and Barbara Honegger, and I can name, unfortunately, 60, 70 more people. And it's just, that's how they destroyed the movement. That's how they did it. They got inside the movement early, knowing that they were making inroads. Remember, the early Truth Movement weren't called the Truth Movement. They were called the Family Steering Committee. These were the Jersey Widows. And they got the 9/11 Commission, even though the commission, itself wasn't very fruitful, but at least they got something done. What did the Truth Movement do after that? Nothing. Nothing. Architects and engineers for the 20th anniversary, you know what they made? A comic book. This is embarrassing. The Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, you know what they're doing? They're making a fiction video about a courtroom battle based upon evidence showing an inside job. What? What? Are you serious? A fiction movie based upon a courtroom battle that you should be where Cradle and Miley Rice are? Oh, it grinds my gears. And I'm not gonna let it go. I'm not gonna let it go. Okay, you got better things to do. It is now 12. It's a little bit late. Was it 12:15? If you have questions, I'll entertain them right away. If you do, if not, I'll let you go. And I'll go back to do. I haven't done a live video since last year. I really haven't. I wish I could. I want to do more of these. I want to do as much videos as I can to try and share information when I can. Like I said, a real movement is an educated movement, a knowledgeable movement, and we need more people. Now, I'm not forcing you guys. Look, I'm not trying to force you guys to build your own channels or do something like that. But we need more people on our side. We need more people, more active people. I'm not telling. Look, I'm not an expert here. I'm not an expert. I never declared myself an expert, right? I just wanted, I have time to read, so I want to share that information to the best I can. I'm shooting out of my own bedroom and stuff. I don't have fancy production costs or anything, but what I'm doing is I'm sharing information with people in the hopes of getting people to also share that information with other people. Okay, that's all I'm asking for. Whether you want to do it through viral video, want to do it through an article, or even a post on Twitter or Facebook, whatever viral media you choose. You do it. You can do it. You can. And some of you people in this room, you're more than qualified. You're more than qualified. You look at all the wrong people doing the right things, and it's just like, why can't I do that? You can. You can. You just got to believe in yourself. And I believe in you. And, some of you people basically may not have like the confidence to, go in front of a video and camera. I was like that too, 4 years ago. I was nervous as hell. My first ever interview I did 4 years ago was with a Chuck O'Celli show, and it was a 2 hour interview. I had all like these new notepads and papers on the floor and on the desk. I was nervous as heck, but after a while, I got comfortable, and now I could basically just do a video whenever I want. And yeah, I'm not handsome looking, or I don't sound pleasing enough, but that's irrelevant. And the information that you provide, that you share with people, is so relevant. It's so pertinent. It's so important. And some of you people in this room, I know you by name. I see there's 19 people in this room. I'm telling you right now, to some of you people in this room, you know who I'm talking about. Okay. I'm not going to embarrass you and name you by name, but you're more than qualified. You're more than qualified. And, it would behoove you to do it because you're doing a valuable service to people. And I hope that you would reconsider whether it's coming from a written form or a video format. You choose what you want to use to share the information, but share it. It's the only way we're going to win on two fronts: the battle for information from the federal government and the battle of disinformation, unfortunately, come from the 9/11 Truth Movement. We have to pick our battles wisely, and we have to remain steadfast and patient and always accessible to the public. And so I'll leave it at that. I'll bid you good night and really thank you very much for coming today and coming tonight. I'll do more of these live videos as much as I can. Hopefully, next week I'll do another one in which I'll talk with you in the evening hours. Everybody, guys, have a very good evening and a great weekend. And thank you very, very much for coming tonight.